This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth here in Acapulco for Anarchapulco 2017. And I'm joined right now by the one and only Larken Rose. And a couple of nights ago we were, chatting around the bar, having some late night discussions, and the topic got pretty deep. And I must say, I was pleasantly surprised to hear your views on the theory of evolution. I got to admit, I must have just assumed that you subscribed to that theory, but I hear that you do not subscribe to that theory, and as I say, I was pleasantly surprised. So, could you explain your position on the theory of evolution?
Well, I totally admit it's an incomplete position. Basically, I think evolution happens. I think the current version of the explanation, like the Dawkins explanation, basically, that all life on Earth is a result of random mutation plus natural selection, is provably bogus. It's totally wrong. And the thing is, I can't explain what all does it, but I can definitely prove mathematically that is not the explanation for it. That does not at all cover the actual evidence you see. It's one of those things that I haven't gotten around to make it, like I want to do an animated video about that sometime. But I haven't bothered to because I don't particularly care. There's so many things that people believe or disbelieve or argue about that I don't really care about because the peace of humanity doesn't depend on it. So I never get around to them. But there's a lot of things like that, and there's a lot of topics that I just sort of don't talk about in public usually, except now when you suddenly ask me about it. Because these are disagreements that would be fun to talk about after the state is gone, but right now my main focus is the people who think that there should be violent domination of mankind. Then we can bicker about why there are platypi later.
Some people are probably wondering, because you said there are some things that you can definitely point to show that it doesn't make any sense. What's one of those things, at least, that you can say, this looks weird to me?
Well, there's a lot. It's not so much about just hunches, but I mean, being growing up, running around in the woods and loving nature and seeing all the miracles, for lack of a better term. And I don't believe in what most people call God, so I'm not a creationist or any of that. But there's so much about the awesome design, I'll use the word design, in so many different species that just looks miraculous, and there is no way, and I can statistically prove it, there's no way you get there by, just it happened to get a little bit closer to that, and then those survived better and had offspring, and then it happened to get a little closer. And I'll use examples like a rattlesnake or something. So you have hinged fangs that are hollow and have tubes, and then you have something that manufactures poison and puts it in a sack. If you're missing any of them, the whole apparatus is worthless. So to get from not that to that by, accidentally some things changed until you get this ridiculously complex apparatus, it just doesn't work. You can't get there by that route. And the thing is that if I ever get around to making that video, mostly it'll just annoy people because I don't pretend to know what did make that happen. But part of the scientific process is if somebody has a theory that's wrong, disproving it is a useful thing. And that's all it does. I don't have anything to replace it with other than saying, something is at work here that is a lot more, and whatever terms you use, people freak out. It seems a lot more like intelligence and design, and then people immediately ask, well, who's the designer? And my answer is, I don't know. But this is not blind luck. This is not, some things happen to be born a little bit different and survive better. And someday I may make that video.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're almost alluding to this concept of irreducible complexity I've heard, where it's like the analogy of the mousetrap, where you have the base, you have the spring, you have the little mechanism to hold it down. If any one of those pieces are not present at one time, then the whole thing cannot function as a whole. So when you break it down on the molecular level, if you're going to borrow from other species, you have to be able to explain how those mutations happen on the micro level, right?
Right. And you see that in basically every species. Like, even if you just pick some, relatively boring species of bird or something, you learn, it does this really complex, instinctive thing, and it builds it buries acorns in all these different places and can somehow remember where all of them are and all these complex things. And so many things are easy to demonstrate. Like, if you have two advancements, like, the rattlesnake has the whole teeth thing, and it has the rattle to go to make things not step on it, and things learn that when you hear that thing, you hear that noise, run away. the explanation of, oh, it just sort of randomly happened. You can't get two developments at once by way of that mechanism. And it's really easy to demonstrate that if you're just rolling the dice and randomly mutating a thing, you can't get two developments to happen to inch along side by side. There's statistically no chance of that happening. And yet it happens constantly with every single species, because every single species will have its whole collection of fascinating and amazing things that it does, either physical traits or behavioral traits or any of that, and you can't get there by that route. And I don't, right now I just have to call it magic because I don't know how to explain it, but I can prove that it isn't just random mutation and survival of the fittest.
Are you willing to consider the concepts of creationism when we take it back to, where does this all begin? Like you said, you refer to it as magic, but are you completely ruling out creationism?
What I see in nature, and here's where it sort of gets sticky, because people are so used to hearing like the creationist version and the Dawkins version, and they sort of think those are the two choices. And I don't subscribe to either one, but when I look at nature, it totally looks to me like design. And then the question is, who's the designer? I don't know, but and when I was talking to you, I used the analogy of, if I leave a pile of Legos in my living room and I come back and somebody's built this big intricate house, and I say, wow, that wasn't by luck. The pile didn't do that itself. Somebody did that. And if
some would say if there's billions of years and enough chance and probability, and if you give it enough time, say trillions of years, some say that could arrange itself by itself if you had enough time involved. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, and there are ways to prove that. First of all, we don't nearly have enough time for it to even begun to happen by blind luck. And second of all, there are ways to prove that it can't keep going. You can't get to the diversity we have by way of that mechanism. I mean, you could say, well, if you wait a few trillion years, you might get an amino acid, but the sophistication of the design, I'm going to keep using the word, totally indicates to me there is, and I have to assume a consciousness, because I've never seen something designed by something that isn't conscious, but I have no idea what it is. But to just admit, like, it looks like something did this, like the Lego house. Something did this. I don't know who. If you ask me who, I have no idea who is in my house, but I'm pretty sure it didn't do it by itself. And so actually the scientific approach is to say, this looks like design. And a bunch of scientists have said that who don't believe in God and say, this looks like design. And other people have tantrums at them instead of just saying, yeah, it does look like design. And we don't know why. We don't know who we may not know who the designer is. But to pretend that it just doesn't look like that. And the more they learn about even individual cells, like, well, it's just a piece of mush that does stuff. And then they learn more and more, and they go, this is actually an insanely complex factory in every single cell that is like a zillion times more intricate than we ever knew. And to get there by, well, it just happened to luck out that way, it just gets more and more ridiculous the more you learn about the specifics of like almost every organism on the planet, up to and including us. And so I just think it's so many people try to stick the label science on stuff that isn't at all following the scientific process, because they get to evidence that's uncomfortable and they can't explain, and they just try to pretend it away. Or no, it's not really that. It's something simple and materialistic, and we already understand everything. Scientists have been saying that forever. Now we're done. Now we understand everything. And then the next week it shows they were wrong about almost everything they thought.
Were you ever an atheist and then turned agnostic? Atheist evolved into agnostic?
Well, I don't even quite know what to call myself, because what I believe in isn't at all like what most people call God, but I'm also not a materialist. I don't think it's just dead matter crashing into each other. I do believe in, a term I use is universal intention. I see design not just in the physical world, but in what humanity is supposed to be, and or the universal should is a term I use. Like, I think there is a good and bad. It isn't just, well, things are crashing into each other and we happen to like them crashing into each other this way and not that way. So that implies an awareness, a consciousness, and an intention of something, like the universe is conscious. And as soon as you start talking like that, it sounds all weird and bizarre. But I don't know how else to explain it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what name to give it. I generally, if people say, do you believe in God? I usually say, probably not what you call God. So the short answer is no, but I also don't think we're just piles of Legos crashing into each other. I definitely see intention and consciousness, not just in people, but in basically the universe.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Goes to show you shouldn't make certain assumptions. As I said, I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, good. I'm glad you don't subscribe to that. For people viewing this right now, where can they check out more of your work?
The easiest place is youtube.com/LarkenRose, which is LarkenRose, and there's a whole bunch of videos there, and with varying degrees of views. There's Jones Plantation is a fun one, and look up Message to the Voting Cattle, which somebody else made out of my audiobook. So there's lots of fun. And The Most Dangerous Religion, which is another video that somebody else made for my clips. It's actually my favorite video, and I didn't make it.
Let me guess, the authoritative state.
Yep, the belief in authority, which is a religion, and a horribly dangerous and insane religion, like way worse than any other in the history of the world.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is all about abolishing the state and trying to form something better. So thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.